Welcome to the Latin Wealth Podcast, a podcast dedicated to educating the Latino community about entrepreneurship, investing, and business.
Yo, what's going on, Latin Wealth family? Welcome to another episode to the Latin Wealth Podcast. This is Wealth Wednesday. Hopefully, you guys are blessed and doing well. Very excited about today's episode because we got three really good topics that we're going to be diving into today. Number one, we're going to be talking about Costa Rica and its rise as a Latin American tech hub. We're also going to be diving into China's growing relationship with Latin America. And then we're also going to be hitting on Trump's deportation policies and how they're pushing Latin American Latinos to Spain. So, very interesting conversation. If you guys are tuning in for the first time, typically I have my co-host on here, Jeremiah. He is a phenomenal co-host. Unfortunately, he's not on today, but it's all good. He'll be back on next week, and we're gonna have a great time today. So stay tuned. If you guys have been checking out the Latin Wealth Podcast for a while, and I'll do us a favor, huge favor, share this episode with three people right now. Go ahead and share this with three people. Hit that share button, hit that share button on YouTube, wherever you're listening to this podcast at. Share this with one other person because we're going to be going into some very important information in here. And we need as many people to join the ride and get quality information, right? It's so easy for us to consume nonsense and just BS in the world, and we always want to continue to help educate our community as much as possible. And so, look, let's dive into it today. So, first and foremost, Costa Rica's rise as Latin America's tech hub. Okay, we're going to be diving into this today. So, look, we know that Costa Rica is known as a tropical, beautiful place. I haven't been just yet, but we'll be going, I would say, pretty soon. I want to definitely go to Costa Rica, but I've only heard amazing and beautiful things about the country. And it's been known to be a tropical economy, but now they're transitioning to being a tropical economy built on innovation. And we'll go into what I mean by a tropical economy, right? So, Costa Rica has recorded a GDP growth of 4.3% in 2024. So they're on the rise. The nation's sustained growth comes as a result of 3 decades of strategic transition, all focused on an open economy and a green ethos. Now, what's the shift? What do you mean by that, Chris? What do you mean by a tropical economy built on innovation? This isn't really making too much sense. Let me break this down. Costa Rica has shifted its focus from commodity exports to a diverse model that focuses on innovation, social empowerment, and sustainability. In 2024, it became the second largest exporter of high tech goods in Latin America, right after Mexico, spotlighting the country's advanced manufacturing success from microchips to medical instruments. All right. So this repositioning is reflected in the country's national brand, and the brand's mission is to shape the country's export, tourism, and investment promotion strategies around a shared value of sustainability, social responsibility, innovation, and excellence. All right. So they are branding themselves in a way to where they're essentially saying, hey, we are no longer the country that is just known for exporting commodities, exporting fruits and pineapple. We want to be known as a country that exports tech goods, that exports digital services and whatnot. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to share. I mentioned that they are rebranding themselves, and I want to kind of dive into the website that they created, and they're really promoting as their rebrand. Okay, so this is the article that I'm discussing right now. Costa Rica's quiet rise as Latin America's high tech hub. But if we dive into the article, there is a link to the repositioning is reflected in the country's national brand, essential Costa Rica. All right, so that is what they are being transitioned into. And so as we click on the link, we will go into the website. Obviously, this is in Spanish, and we'll get the translated version right now. But Somos Esencial Costa Rica is what their tagline is, right? So we are essential Costa Rica is the first thing that you see when you pop into the website. And it let me translate this into English for my English viewers out there. But as you can see, it says that we are biodiversity, we are intelligent, we are culture, we are nature. So it's really painting the picture of like, hey, we are more than just tourism. We are more than just the beauty and what people typically come here for. We have programs, and we want to be known as a country that has unlimited opportunity. Right? Do you long for an environment conducive to business or personal growth? Look no further. So look, guys, they have created, and I think this is I'm gonna give my opinion. I'll give it right now. I think this is beautiful. I think this is amazing that they're doing this. We'll go into some more numbers of why Costa Rica is really thriving, but we're just specifically looking at this website and what they're promoting to people. They're wanting people to come to Costa Rica, right? Again, they want to welcome all people to our lands through our values and Costa Rica's essence. Again, they want to position themselves as um, the country that has all the essentials and all your necessities, right? That's why they're rebranding themselves to Esencial Costa Rica. And look, they also want to continue to grow through tourism, but also through partnership, direct investments, and exports, right? So I think this is a beautiful thing. They're welcoming all types of people to the country. And if you see some of this language, it wasn't translated correctly. But yeah, they want to be known as this destination that can compete with other countries, right? That you can come here, not only visit and retire here, but you can do business here, right? You can have a thriving business here. And I think this is something that's beautiful to see because, as you know, um, me being Puerto Rican, Jeremiah being Puerto Rican, we always have the controversial conversation about statehood, independence, what all this looks like. And this is a great example of what we can learn as Puerto Rican and implement some of these strategies and some of what's happening in these countries and to incorporate into Puerto Rico and what Puerto Rico could become, right? Reshaping the country as a country that not only you can come for tourism, but you can come and do business. We may have incentive here. Well, they already do have incentive. But just speaking from an independent country's perspective, they're being more strategic about how they brand their country and how they're doing business. All right. So look, I just wanted to show you this this website. If you guys want more information about Esencial Costa Rica, you can definitely come to this website and dive more into what they are offering and what they are focused on. And so, what I want to do now is I want to continue to hit on some of the numbers and some statistics around Costa Rica because it is very fascinating, right? So, in 2024, Costa Rica recorded over $32 billion in total exports, an 8% rise from the previous year. Right, that figure includes $21 billion in goods and $11 billion in services, equating to 30%, 32% of the GDP and supporting over 700,000 jobs. All right. So, medical devices, as I spoke about, something that they're also focused on, now accounts for 44% of all goods exports, with continued doubled growth. Just a couple more numbers, all right? I don't want you to, I don't want to lose you here, all right? But a couple more numbers that are very fascinating. Over $1.5 billion of Costa Rican pineapple are exported around the world each year. So we talk about, we're going to get into digital services, but we have medical equipment. We have goods and services that are being exported, and um, agricultural exports are accounting for 18% of the country's total goods export in 2024, 7% up from the previous year. So they're hitting literally all the essentials. They have a foundation of how they can do business and where they can do business with other countries. $1.5 billion of Costa Rican pineapples. That's absolutely insane, right? And it really is signaling a diverse economy in Costa Rica, which is something we talk about a lot on the podcast. It's very important that these countries are not just reliant on one industry and they diversify themselves to be able to do business with multiple countries and with other economies, right? What else? So big companies like Boston Scientific, Medtronic, and Abbott have turned to Costa Rica into a regional hub for surgical instruments. These are all well-known companies in the United States, and they have planted some seeds in Costa Rica. And while they've also secured long-term partnerships with Intel Corporation to reinvest in advanced semiconductor manufacturing and R&D facilities in Costa Rica. And as we know, semiconductor space, the chip making space, this is a massive space to be in, and you already see countries investing in Costa Rica to have different facilities out there. Now, the last thing I'll say about Costa Rica, now look, this is all amazing. This is great. But Costa Rica's biggest leap, however, is invisible. It's really their digital services. In 2024, 58% of Costa Rica's services exports were knowledge intensive, spanning IT, cloud computing, analytics, business services, and telecom. Much of it, of it, much of it delivered to clients in North America and Europe. So look, y'all, they are finding a multitude of different ways to do business with different countries. And what I think this is very interesting, as someone that is in the digital space, the marketing space, making money online and whatnot, I think this is really cool to see that a country is having a huge focus on knowledge-based information and knowledge-based services. That again, that's spanning across IT, tech, analytics, and business services. So let me know what you guys think about this, right? There's a lot of positive, a lot of good that is happening in Costa Rica. And I'm interested to know what you guys think. Are you currently living in Costa Rica? Are you thinking about moving to Costa Rica? I think an individual that I was talking to recently, he was deciding between Costa Rica and I think Puerto Rico. He's been looking at property out there. So it's a definitely very interesting place that we want to keep an eye on. But let us know what your thoughts are about that. Um, Also, to continue discussion about Latin America, China expands visa free access to five Latin American countries. So, as we know, we spoke about multiple times on this podcast that China is continuously looking for ways to develop a relationship with Latin America, right? As some as Latin America's relationship with America is becoming a little muddy. You know, there's some countries that are doing business with America. There's some that are like, I don't know if I can deal with this. Um, China on Sunday has begun implementing a trial policy that grants visa-free entry to citizens of Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Peru, and Uruguay. It's the first time that China has extended such access to nations in Latin America and the Caribbean. Now, under the policy, which will remain in effect through May 31st, 2026, holders of the passport from these five countries can enter China without a visa for up to 30 days for purpose including business, tourism, family visits, cultural exchange, and transit. So, look, what better way to build a relationship with somebody than to welcome them into your home, and say, hey, you can stay here for up to 30 days, whether you want to do business, whether you want to hang out with your family, your friends, you want to experience the culture. Come in here, check out China. check out how we operate, and they're China is just making it easier for countries to go to their country and experience it, and eventually they're going to want to do business with these other countries. And if I'm not mistaken, last year, in addition to Latin America, China has also opened up their gates to countries like Saudi Arabia, where they can come in for about 30 days, visa free, and just experience China, right? So very interesting. And this is something that they've been testing out for a while, and they're going to continue to test clearly. But in 2024, a direct flight was launched between Mexico City and South China, spanning a distance of 8,700 miles to become China's longest direct international route. That's it. That's insane. I don't know if you know how far China is from North America, but from Mexico City all the way to South China, there's a direct flight. And they tested it out last year, and obviously that they've seen some success with it if they're opening up the visa to 505 other Latin American countries. Man, that is a long flight. I wonder how long that flight is. Um, Look, a quote by a Chinese representative, they said that these measures demonstrate China's resolve to foster a more dynamic, inclusive, and resilient form of economic globalization. All right. So they are looking to put their footprint in as many countries as possible. Again, you guys know that Jeremiah and I have conversation about all the time about which country is going to be number one? When is it going to be America's time to, as the number one country, the number one, I don't know, like just the number one country. Like everybody perceives America as the number one country. When is that reign going to come to an end, and when is somebody else going to come in that first spot? And we talk about how it's inevitable that China is quickly approaching that number one spot. So look, China's visa-free entry initiative will enhance people-to-people ties and broaden exchange not only between China and Argentina, but those across broader China Latin American region. So man, China is doing their thing. And I've always said, look, I'm not a president, but what we've been talking about so far to this conversation is relationship, relationship, relationship. If I'm a president of a country, I'm focusing on relationship. I'm focusing on how many different countries can I work with? How many different countries can we mutually benefit from, and making sure that we can add value to them. That's what I would focus on. Again, I'm not a president. Maybe that's the reason why I'm not the president, right? Um, but very interesting information. Let us know what you think about what China's doing, and really their footprint, them wanting to leave their footprints in as many different countries as possible, as they're quickly approaching the number one um, spot as like the number one country, right? That people desire to work with, to do business with, to live in. China is they're doing a lot, and I think what else contributes to this and kind of the decline of America a little bit. And I don't want to sound negative. I don't want to sound like I hate America or I hate our president. I don't personally don't want to be like that. I don't want this platform to be like that either. But we definitely have to look at the numbers, and we have to look at the landscape of what's going on in America. And something else that is going on in America is the American dream, quote unquote, is over. Trump's deportation policies are pushing Latin Americans to Spain. All right, this was a direct quote from an article that we will dive into today. Before I share my screen, U.S. President Donald Trump's sweeping deportation campaign and hardline approach to restricting immigrants, particularly from Latin American countries, has caused a knock on effect in Spain. This country is seeing an increasing number of Latinos arriving, abandoning their American dream. Wow, doesn't this sound very familiar, right? We talk about this all the time, right? And this is a clear indication that we are not just pulling stuff out of our behind, right? And just assuming, right? People, let's dive into this story, this individual here. So I want to kind of brush through this conversation. So Benjamin Enrique is a 33-year-old Colombian that arrived in Madrid at the beginning of May by the way of Italy. My first, and this was a direct quote from Benjamin, my first idea was to go to the United States like many other Latinos. I have this dream of America for a better life and to make money, says Benjamin. In one day you can earn enough money to pay a month's rent in Colombia, right? So he was planning to travel to the United States border and cross illegally, but Trump's tougher immigration policy forced him to change his plan. Many Colombian friends told me that they want to go back. They don't feel safe anymore and are scared of ICE. All right, the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and the police. All right. So, look, people that are living in the United States, they don't feel safe anymore. You got family members saying to this individual Benjamin, like, "Hey, I don't know if you want to come out here. We're scared of the police. We're scared of what's going on. It's kind of tricky to live out here." And he has to now wait 2 years before he can apply for a special resident permit for foreigners in a regular situation now. And the last quote is, "The U.S. is too dangerous for us. I think the American dream is over. Now it's Europe," he said. Crazy. It was crazy when we spoke about it. It was crazy when we said, like, yo, we think it's so important that if you have access to get dual residency, um, in two different countries, whether it's America and somewhere else, to go ahead and do that. Uh, People think it's crazy when we mention, hey, uh, you know, Chris and his wife have thought about buying property in Japan, and we want to buy property in Puerto Rico. Jeremiah's moving to Puerto Rico. It's a lot, and people may be thinking like, "Yo, what's going on?" And this is what's going on. People are, and everybody's scenario is different, right? Jeremiah and I and his reasoning for moving to Puerto Rico isn't necessarily this specific reason in the article, but what I think is important, and I think that we continue to encourage on this podcast, is to be independent thinkers and to think outside the box and to make sure that you're making correct decisions, not only for yourself, for your family, and the next generation, right? That is super important. And I think people making these decisions, they're looking at their family, they're looking at the next generation, they're looking at the following generation. Where do I want my family to grow up? Where do I want them to live? What opportunities do I want them to have? And I think that plays a part in also people no longer necessarily believing in the American dream and looking elsewhere, looking in other places. I mentioned that we just came back from Japan, and I'm like, bro, we had a phenomenal time out there. And every time we go out there, we feel we feel safe. We feel at peace. I see a certain glow in my wife when she's out there. And granted, when you're in places for vacation and you're traveling and whatnot, the experience is a little different. But even in Puerto Rico, when we go home to Puerto Rico, especially me, it's like I feel home. It's like I feel like I belong here and I've been called to come back here, right? So I don't know all that entails for me in my future, but I am certainly open-minded about, having property in multiple places and being open-minded to other countries and living there. We currently live in Texas, and there's some things in the school system that my wife and I don't necessarily agree with, and we're like, hey, do we want to have our kids? Do you want to raise our kids in Texas long term? I don't know. I really don't know. But anyways, going back to this article, Spain has already recorded a surge in number of Venezuelans seeking asylum in the first quarter of 2025, with just about just under 24,000 residents, an increase of 54 percent compared to the same period last year. So they're getting a ton of people coming in. They're like, hey, we don't want to go to America anymore. We want to come to Spain. This is a new opportunity for us, right? And with so many people afraid to come to America for various different reasons. Um, People are saying those are giving up on the American dream to pursue the European dream, and obviously the gateway is Spain, right? And man, this is very interesting. You know, you have an immigrant lawyer in Madrid says it's a bit like the lottery, right, for people to go out there to Spain, and it's different. Now, this is a different country. I've never been to Spain, but I've been to Europe. Completely different lifestyle, completely different way of thinking. And you know what, people going to Spain, they got you got to realize that it may be easier for them, an easier transition for them on the fact that they do speak Spanish, right? When you come to America, why do you see so many different immigrants? They go to these major cities like San Antonio, Houston, L.A., Miami, New York. Obviously, there's Chicago. There's a bunch of different cities that have a huge Latino population, but typically they're going to go where there's other familiar faces and other people that speak Spanish. And if they can go to a country like Spain where they speak Spanish everywhere, you don't have to worry about specifically where to go. That can be something else that's, very enticing for people. And what's also interesting in Europe, it's super common that people speak multiple languages. So they'll speak French, they may speak Spanish as well, they may speak Italian, and they may know a little bit of different languages. Opposed to being in America, most people out here, most of us, we don't know how to speak multiple languages. Either you speak Spanish, or you speak English, or that's pretty much it, right? And if you do speak a language, a second language, it's probably the language of the country where your family came from. Um, but I find this really interesting, and I can kind of continue to go on and on about this, but it's very interesting to see people saying, you know what, even though America is closer, and maybe it's I have family out in America. I'm also open to go to Europe. I'm also going to open to going to Spain, right? I don't really not like what's going on in America. And look, I say all this to say, I'm not gonna again be on this platform saying, "Hey, you should vote for so and so. You should vote for so and so." If you like our president, great. If you don't like our president, great. That's up to you. But what I think is important here is that we are open minded about our future, open minded on what can benefit us and our family in the next generation, and be independent thinkers. Know that what once was and what once was taught to us may not be benefit for us, beneficial for us in the future, right? Or for present time. And there's a lot of information that's been taught to us in the past that again may not be beneficial for us right now. So, look, I know this was probably a longer episode, but I think these were three very, very important topics, and they kind of all tie together. I really want to know your thoughts on, a Latinos going to Europe, and I already know there's going to be people out saying like, "Oh, good, we don't want you here. We don't want, whatever." If you're one of them people, God bless your soul, right? But what are your thoughts about, people being open-minded to going just to different countries? And look, this is not only I want to say this last thing, right? It's not only Latinos that are going to different countries. Don't get it twisted. I've spoken to multiple Americans that were served in the U.S. military that have moved to Spanish-speaking countries, that have moved to the Caribbean, that have moved to Central America, because their work-life balance is better, their peace of mind is better, um, and it's just a better way of life in these different countries. This is happening with Americans that were serving in the military, serving in the army, right? They see how it is in America. They didn't like it. They went somewhere else. So not only is this happening to Latinos, but I see this happening with Americans as well. I know this was a lot. Would love to know your thoughts down below. Share this episode with one other person. If you disagreed with any of the articles or something I said, let me know down below. Let's keep it respectful. Let's keep growing. The Latin World family. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.